Hey everyone, Mike Miller with the Herald Times, joined by IU basketball columnist Jeremy Price, coming to you from the Value City Arena in Columbus, Ohio. Actually coming to you from like a restaurant area, kind of like
the boardroom they call it.
The boardroom? Yeah, there's a little bar behind us. Probably would have needed some of the drinks in that bar had this one not gone Indiana's way after being up by 18 points about midway or early in that first half. An outstanding Indiana start that the team basically, well, they did. They blew that 18-point lead, that hot start.
Every bit of it.
Very quickly in the first few minutes of the second half. Basically, it was almost a complete opposite of the team we saw in the first half against the team we saw in the second half. And yet, this team that does not respond well to adversity actually did. A 10-0 run after after Ohio State went up 62-61 around the 11:30 mark of the second half. Indiana came right back with a 10-0 run, split evenly with 5 points each from Rob Johnson, Juwan Morgan. Created some separation, had another late scare to survive in the final minute, but ultimately did that, and Indiana secured only their second win in the last 8 games, but it does give Indiana hope for securing a single bye and the number 10 seed going into next week's Big Ten tournament.
Well, the one thing you have to say for this Indiana team at this point is that they'll change it up, do a little bit of everything, and it's hard to really know what works or doesn't work for this team because it can neither stand prosperity or handle adversity at various times, and has done a little bit of both really over the last couple of weeks. And today was yet another example of that. Got off to a hot start, saw it all go away, pushed it back out, and still made it interesting in the end.
They did.
So it's kind of a vintage 2016-17 Indiana basketball performance here this afternoon, all rolled into just 40 minutes. We managed to avoid overtime, thank goodness.
Way too many overtime periods this year. Going into the postseason, it was a nice performance from Rob Johnson. Really, his ability to shake off really just a very ugly ugly February, a month that saw him actually go scoreless at Minnesota. Had a few other games where he just did not look at all like the player we've watched for the last 2.5 years. Just a really hard funk to really understand how he fell into it, how he couldn't get out of it. But he comes in early. He's really pivotal in that 11-0 start. He had, I think, 15 points in his first 11 minutes, 26 for the day, one short of his career high, which was set in that triple overtime game against Penn State last month. A big snapping out of a slump, whatever you want to call it, in a very big way today by Robert Johnson.
Yeah, and really, right now it's all about the guards for Indiana, basically. I mean, you look today, Robert Johnson, James Blackman, Josh Newkirk all had good games. Pretty much when those three are all locked in, you know that Indiana's probably going to have a pretty decent day offensively. It's always kind of hit and miss with the inside guys. Thomas Bryant had his moments where he was really good. Juwan Morgan had his moments when he was really good. But it seems like those just are like little bursts here and there. There's no consistency for getting those guys inside. The consistency comes when guys like Blackman, Johnson, Newkirk are basically able to knock down shots or get to the basket, get to the rim, those kind of situations. And that was the case today. It was the good side of this. And in a lot of ways, this was not unlike that triple overtime Penn State game in a lot of ways for Indiana, where it just kind of rode those guys and had enough offense in the end to win this game, and that's what it turned out to be. Indiana started the game well enough defensively, but quickly Ohio State kind of figured out that there was a sieve-like quality to Indiana's defense. Only Ohio State's was actually worse. So
Much worse.
I mean, I said on Twitter that Ohio State had an NBA All-Star game level of interest in playing defense at the outset of this one.
That's really what it looked like.
And it got just a smidge better for that first part of the second half when Ohio State made their run. But I thought a lot of that was really just Indiana being stagnant more than it was Ohio State playing any kind of great defense, because once Indiana kind of got going again, there was no stopping them.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of follow up on that, you talk about the guards and the need to really lean on those guys and have them kind of set the tone for things. Only 12 turnovers today, too, and for long stretches they went without, I think, the first 8 minutes of the game. I think they may have only had one, something like that. So they built that strong start. And Robert Johnson is turnover-prone as he's been throughout his career. Actually very turnover-prone for a guy who's not always commanding the ball. No turnovers, 6 assists. I think Josh Newkirk and James Blackman each had 3, which you can live with. But really that ability to get out in transition and avoid those half-court sets where we've kind of seen them struggle in, that helped. And just, too, you saw them making plays, moving, and getting the kind of movement we don't always see from this team.
Right, you talked about getting off to that start with only 1 turnover in the early going. They only had 5 at halftime, really the turnover problem only existed for a handful of minutes. And again, it was during that run that Ohio State made at the beginning of the second half. I think Indiana had 5 turnovers in that first 8 minutes or so of the second half. So 12 for the game, but 5 of them came in about an 8-minute stretch. So again, just like everything else, both good and bad, it seems to come in burst for this Indiana team, and it's just a matter of which one will ultimately win out. And on this day, Indiana had more good than it did bad, so it worked out.
And like you wrote about, there's always that temptation now with this team, and this game was prime example of that. Just seeing the 11-0 run, yet coupled with a big surge by Ohio State early in the second half. It's tempting to feel a lot of different things about this team. Probably more negative than good at this point, frankly, if we're being honest. But because, like you said in your column, even as you build that lead, like, Art, we've seen this before. We've seen them go down this road. We've seen them kind of give you some false hope, and you're hesitant to buy in. And yet, as you go into a Big Ten tournament setting where if you're possibly opening up on Thursday, you could possibly draw maybe Iowa or Michigan. Obviously, Michigan probably gives you the willies at this point.
Yeah.
But Iowa probably doesn't.
No.
And really, no team really should at this point, maybe outside of Purdue. But hell, even Purdue on a neutral floor, I'm not sure that it's going to be that. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of an open situation where if they can kind of find any way to sustain this, they're still the same team they've been throughout this Big Ten season, which is flawed, broken, and frustrating. But there is still that temptation to think, what if they can actually do this again?
Like you said, the negative tends to sort of creep in more than anything else, especially within an in-game situation. But because of the flashes they've shown both lately and back at the beginning of the year, you know that there's something good in there. It's just a matter of it coming out. I think in a Big Ten tournament situation, if you sort of succumb to that temptation that, okay, this team could put a run together, it's hard to see them putting a run together. It's easy to see this team putting together a game against an opponent, whether it's Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, whoever. I mean, I think in a one-game situation they're certainly capable, but what's hard to see is that they would put together 3 or 4 days in a row of that kind of performance, which is what it's going to require for them to do anything significant in this Big Ten tournament.
Well, we'll see what happens heading out there. Well, actually, first, before we even think about D.C., we'll be thinking of a 8 o'clock start in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is when Nebraska... On Sunday night, which is when Nebraska hosts Michigan at 8 p.m. out there in Lincoln. That game will determine whether Indiana opens up on Wednesday as the 11 seed, in which case they would face Rutgers, I believe.
Yep, Rutgers is locked in.
So Rutgers is locked in as a 14. Hey, go Rutgers. They beat Illinois today. Scared the heck out of the Illini now, who are now begging and pleading and hoping they can win at least a game or two in the Big Ten tournament to get to the NCAA tournament. Wait, what? Oh, Illinois is actually in the conversation for the
Not
NCAA
after today.
tournament?
I don't
They
think
shouldn't
so.
be.
I think that killed it.
Oh, God. I can't believe that.
I mean, maybe if they get to Sunday. Maybe if they get to the championship game. Maybe.
I don't want to have to make sense of a
don't
world
think so.
where that team is in the NCAA tournament.
But maybe we could get an Illinois-Indiana NIT rematch.
Do we have to?
No, I don't think we have to at all. And I think it highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Well, you never know. We'll know a little bit more tomorrow night around 10 o'clock or maybe even earlier when Nebraska and Michigan get underway and sort the rest of this Big Ten mess out. From there, we'll be in D.C. Wednesday, win or lose. So
yeah, we'll be there on Wednesday regardless. Whenever they play, we'll be there.
We'll be there, and we'll see what happens from here. I'll do it.
Yeah, we'll talk about more of that later.
See ya.